Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back. That was Bittersweet Symphony by The Verve, and it was the choice of my guest this evening who's chosen our playlist, and we'll be chatting about his playlist in just a little while. But I feel like I need to say this. I'm talking to a great of broadcasting, somebody who has a wealth of experience, whether it's in journalism, whether it's presenting quiz shows. You will know him, of course, in this area as the presenter of Northwest Tonight, and before then, an absolute national institution, host of the Krypton Factor, all the way back from 1977. My goodness gracious, Gordon Burns. Good evening. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well. I noticed this wealth of experience always means very old.
No. You're but a young man in broadcasting terms. You've got years left. Let's start at the news. We know you from delivering our news to us here in the Northwest and delivering Northwest Tonight. Being a news anchor is a hefty job, isn't it?
Well, it is. It carries a lot of responsibility and a lot of challenge, but it's the most exciting job to do. That's what attracted me back to hard news reporting not long after the Krypton Factor ended. I mean, to go into work each day not knowing what is going to be in the program that night and not knowing whether this is the day the big story breaks, and perhaps it breaks late. So you've got to be thinking on your feet when you do the program because you haven't had much time to prepare or research that item because suddenly it's broken. Or it might be a very soft, gentle news day, but you still have to fill the program. So yes, it's a good challenge, but a very exciting thing to do, and one I reveled in doing.
And you took over the show in the late 90's in 1997. Do you remember some of those sort of early news stories when you were going to be your first few broadcasts? What were the sorts of things that were happening at the time?
I think I got launched in at the deep end because I think either on day one or day two, I can't remember, or maybe both. Instead of the studio, they decided to do the program live from Manchester Airport,
right?
Where the whole row and fight was going on over the second runway.
Of course,
and there was a lad, some people remember, called Swampy, who was leading the revolution to save the trees and so on, and was stuck up a tree most of the time, and all his supporters were there too, trying to save the environment there from the second runway, which they failed to do in the end. But I was live there, and there's no tougher way to start into a new program, especially a live program that you haven't done for a long time, than to be on an outside broadcast where invariably nothing works in the rehearsal, and you can't understand how this is going to get on the air, and you don't have the benefit of an auto cue, and do about 4 interviews in the program. So it was quite a tough baptism, but maybe that was the best way to start.
But the thing is, you were already a seasoned professional by then. You started your career way back. You were working on sports programs, which would have involved some live content. You were involved in local press, but back in Belfast, weren't you?
Well, indeed so. In fact, I began on local newspapers in Northern Ireland. People say, if you're from Northern Ireland, why haven't you got a Northern Ireland accent like everybody else? Ours comes from there. And I tell you this, that the reason is when I was age 5, we moved to England. So from the age of 5 until the age of 13, I think, we lived in England because of my dad's job, hence no Northern Ireland accent. And then we moved back there. And I was at this rugby playing school, a bit of a posh rugby playing school. And I didn't want to play rugby. I only wanted to play football. But they frowned upon it as not being a snobby enough game like rugby is.
Of course.
And so I formed a rebel soccer league where we had 7-a-side teams. So I thought in the end I needed to write a little magazine to have match reports from all the games we played in our league. And to do league tables and top goal scorers. I even had the editor's column, which of course was me. I was the editor. So I wrote that and said nasty things about everybody else. And one day my headmaster, and this is what changed my life really, the moment it all changed, he called me up one day, wanted to see me at break, which was usually bad news in those days.
Well,
and I went there wondering what I'd done. And when I got there and into his big study, and as he sat behind the desk peering at me, and I saw on his table was my magazine, The Gazette. And I thought, oh, fantastic, he's got that. I'm in for some praise here for my ingenuity and my ability to write and so on. And he picked it up I remember to this day, between his finger and his thumb, and he held it at arm's length as though it stank to high heaven.
Oh.
And he said, "Are you responsible for this, Burns?" And I proudly said, "Well, yeah, yes, I am, sir, yes." And he said, "Have you got a license to sell this in the school?" Which is a completely stupid question, but you're young then, you don't. I panicked. So I didn't know you needed a license. So I said, "Right, so this now is banned. I never want to see this magazine in the school again." He dropped it into his waste bin with a clunk. And I was beside myself, and left his office feeling fury and deflated and beaten. But I'm a fighter. And I came out the next day and I said, "Right." And I wrote the next copy of the magazine and I sold it 2 feet outside the front gate of the school where it was legal to sell, rather than in the school grounds. And because it was a banned magazine, it sold like hot cakes.
And selling Rogue. I mean, I think that says something about how you managed to get your way into this very cutthroat business, I've got to say. Now we're gonna take a little bit of a break for some music now, as we played a Bittersweet Symphony at the start of this segment.
The ones I picked for you simply because it's something in my head, and the Verve. I mean, I think they're a great band, and Richard Ashcroft and all the rest of it. But I mean, they're not quite my scene, but they were my daughter's scene. Of course. She was then into her teens and had discovered indie music, which had only sort of just broken out. And she used to go to these clubs in Manchester, which scared the lights out of me because I didn't want her coming home in taxis or anything like that. So I used to go and sit outside these clubs at 1 a.m, ready to pick her up in the car, though she banned me from being within 100 yards of the door in case people saw her getting into her dad's car to pick her up every night to make sure she got home safely. She was into indie music, and I remember she would come home talking about Oasis before they were big, and the Charlatans, trying to think of all these bands, a Northern Ireland band called Ash at some stage or other. And the Verve was one of her all-time favorites, etc. And I like that particular tune song, whatever you like to call it.
And your second choice, you mentioned Oasis, Don't Look Back in Anger. Now that's something that, particularly for the people of Manchester, has huge connotations to it.
Well, that's why I chose it. I just, again, remember my daughter going, "Oh, about this band called Oasis," who hadn't sort of come through at that stage. And you're going, yeah, right. She now lives in America, in her bedroom here, all the tickets from all those gigs, one from Oasis and so on. But yes, Oasis came up with that one, which was great at the time. I think Wonderwall was in the 90s as well.
Same album.
Which was a good one. But yes, I chose it because it's become the anthem of Manchester after that horrific bombing at the arena. And I just remember, I'm retired now, but I remember watching Northwest Tonight when it showed that gathering. I think it was in St. Anne's Square, and hundreds of people gathered, and there was this silence as they remembered. And then suddenly this one woman, it's one of these iconic moments in television, they were covering it. This one woman in the crowd started to sing Don't Look Back in Anger out loud. And bit by bit, everybody else joined in. And it was so moving and just an amazing moment and a wonderful moment to capture on television. And so, yes, that's why I've chosen it. A great Manchester band, even though they support City.
I'll get Noel on at some point or another, and he can have a chat about the blue and the red and how that can influence things. It truly is an iconic moment and certainly a musical anthem for the city. Let's have a listen now. This is Don't Look Back in Anger, Oasis.